Alrighty, we are back with Transcendent series by Lisa Beeson and chapter 22. Just speeding right along. We're getting to the end of the book, so I'm like, ah! Plus, I've been away for a few weeks now. Alrighty, we're just gonna get to it because I'm just like excited and ready to go. Alrighty. And it's getting hot in the car, so we're gonna be moving back inside real quickly after this. And I might still be able to film some inside, but that's where all the dogs are, so it's noisy. Alrighty, chapter 22. Taking Ozzy's advice, Ari stayed only in the apartment and on the rooftop over the next couple days. She tried to relax, but there was nothing on TV, and she had conquered all their video games on the first day of seclusion, much to Leo's amazement. Her sleeping patterns were sporadic at best. The nightmares of something chasing her were back, but now she could feel only the oily shadow tentacles of the shades licking at her heels, and the sound of the engines from the suit's sedans roaring behind her. She asked Leo to get her some books, telling him that she'd pay him back when she had more money, but he waved her off and said he would do it for her if she told him how to beat the last level on the video game he'd been working on for weeks. She agreed, and he came back with a whole stack of books for her. She had told Leo that she was good with anything, so he got all kinds of books from almost every genre. Whenever she was bored or couldn't sleep, she'd go up to the rooftop and read. Early one morning, Ari woke up with a gasp. The black sedan had almost run her down this time, and it was hard to calm the pounding of her heart. There was no way she was going to be able to fall back asleep. So without looking, she plucked the next book from the top of the pile and quietly went up to the rooftop. The sun was just cresting over the buildings, and Ari stood there soaking in the warmth of the five-finger-like rays reaching out to her, making the last vestiges of the nightmare melt away. Blowing out the last of the tension in her chest, she looked down at the book she had brought up. It was a Sudoku book. It was a book of Sudoku puzzles, and the tension immediately came back. Her dad loved filling out Sudoku puzzles in his free time. She would silently watch him fill them out until she figured out how to do it, and sometimes when he would get stuck, she would put it down. Ugh. Stop, please. Her dad loved filling out Sudoku puzzles in his free time. She would silently watch him fill them out until she figured out how to do it. And sometimes when he would get stuck, he would put it down so he could come back to it later with fresh eyes, as he would say. When he did, Ari would try to help him out and sneak in a couple answers. He finally caught on to what she was doing when she accidentally used a pen instead of a pencil, like he had used. But instead of getting mad that she was messing with his puzzles, he just chuckled and shook his head at how clever she was. From then on, when he got stuck, he would ask her for a clue so he could finish it on his own. All the good feelings the beautiful sunrise had given her were now replaced by an overwhelming homesickness. She let the book fall from her hand as she walked over toward the eastern side of the building and sat on the parapet, letting her legs dangle over the edge. She felt Cam's calming presence even before he sat down next to her, swinging his long legs in time with hers. Usually Cam would try to say something funny, but he seemed to have picked up on her somber mood and intrinsically knew that what she needed was just for him to be there. He reminded her of how Roosevelt always knew when she needed his quiet comfort by her side. They sat like that for a while until Ari gathered up the courage to ask, "Cam, what's the date today?" He looked down at his digital watch and that showed the time and date. "Today is August 9th. She nodded, and a single tear escaped to slip down her cheek. "That's what I thought. Thanks." Cam scooted closer. Now that she had broken the silence, he felt that he could ask, "What's the matter, Pipes?" Ari wiped away the errant tear. "Nothing, it's just family stuff. You don't want to hear about it. Street kid code and all that." She didn't look at him. She knew one look into his concerned, soft brown eyes would undo her. But from her periphery, she saw his shoulders slump and he looked down at the street below. Miles Baldwin, he breathed. What was that? She looked over, confused. Gabby, please sit down, babe. We're going to be going back inside soon. But you got to stop. Cam took a deep breath. Miles Baldwin. That's my real name. It's the only thing my father ever gave me. It seemed that once the floodgates were open, everything came pouring out. My mom said that my dad didn't start off as a bad guy. They met at college and were totally in love. When they graduated, he got a job at a high-tech computer company. Apparently, he was some kind of computer whiz. They got married and were going to live happily ever after. Then, a couple months later, she told him that she was pregnant. He had seemed really psyched at the time, and when they found out I was going to be a boy, he wanted to name me after himself, like he was named after his father. I was going to be Miles Cormac Baldwin III. Everything was going swell until my mom was about 6 months pregnant with me, and he started acting sketchy. He was usually really social, but he started shutting himself away, distancing himself, even from my mom. Then one day, instead of coming home after work, he just took off. The cop said there wasn't any sign of foul play, so he must have just skipped town. It devastated my mom. He was the love of her life, and he just abandoned her and their child. She had wanted to change my name just to spite him, but they had already monogrammed Miles all over a bunch of my baby stuff. So she kept Miles, but changed my middle name to Lucas, after her father and grandfather, and called me Milo instead. After I was born, Grams wanted us to come live with her in Illinois, but Mom was stubborn and wanted to stay in New Hampshire, just to prove that she didn't need anyone else. She had to take on 2 jobs just to pay the bills and keep us in a 2-bedroom apartment, but she made sure to be there for me when I needed her. It was just me and my mom, and we were happy, or at least I was. Then she busted her head on some stupid ice, and that was the end of that. He wiped at his eyes and sniffed. Ari put a hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, Cam. Her own sorrow melted away with the thought of her friend in pain. Cam looked off into the distance and continued on like she hadn't said anything. After the funeral, Grams took me to live with her in Rockford. She lived on an old farm outside of town and let me have the run of it. I was kind of an annoying kid, so she thought it was better to just let me be a daredevil and take me to the ER every now and then, instead of having to deal with my hellion antics in her house. She was strict and had an acerbic wit, but she loved me and she did her best to raise me right. About 1.5 years ago, she had a major stroke. The doctor said the machines were the only things keeping her alive, so I told her that I loved her, and I said my goodbyes, then skipped town before they pulled the plug. He took a deep breath and sat up straighter, shaking off his sadness like a dog shakes off water, trying to resume his usual laid-back, genial demeanor. Foster care wasn't my style, and since I only had a couple years until I turned 18, I took the cash Grams had squirreled away for years and had a buddy drive me here to Chicago. And now, here I am, an internet celebrity, sitting on a roof with the coolest kid I know. He winked and gave her a smile. Ari didn't know what to say. Cam had just laid himself bare, something he told her never to do, just because he had seen her hurting. As far as she knew, he hadn't told that much about himself to anybody, so she thought it was only fair if she told him about herself as well. My name was Kira Riley, and it's my dad's birthday today. I miss him so much that it hurts. She could feel the tears building up behind her eyes, but she pressed on, telling him about why she had to leave her family and how awesome they were, how they took an estranged, damaged little girl and helped her grow into who she was today. And here I am, a self-emancipated weirdo, sitting on a roof with the coolest internet celebrity I know. Wiping away her tears, she smirked and gave Cam a sideways glance. They both laughed, and then spent the next half hour or so in amicable silence, watching over the city from above. A week had passed with no sign of Shiny Man when Hawk called the flock into his office. Ari practically flew downstairs, happy to be getting out of the apartment. They all sat down in the chairs that faced Hawk's desk, and he was actually smiling. "Well done, guys. The video has blown up. It got almost 1 million views just over the first weekend. And Ari, you were brilliant. Store sales and youth gym memberships have gone up, all because of you." Cam beamed over at Ari, who smiled shyly down at her shoes. "You all earned every cent of this. Good job," Hawk said as he passed out envelopes to them all. Ari waited until she got upstairs and back in her alcove to look in the envelope. She took out the cash and counted it. Hawk had given her $250 for free running around the city. She couldn't believe it. All Ari had to do was make one more video and she'd have enough to afford the train ticket to Toronto, maybe even get a sleeper car. The flock decided to treat Ari to dinner to celebrate the success of her first video, so they went down to Chicago's Little Italy to a bar and grill the boys liked. They assured her she could order anything she wanted, so she ordered her usual amount of food, shocking them all with how much she could put away. They all had a good time teasing and joking around, and Ari enjoyed feeling like one of the guys. After the bill was paid, Tank and Oz said that they were going to meet up with some friends at the bars downtown. Leo said he'd go with them since he had a fake ID. Cam had one too, but he said he was going to head home with Ari. When the group split and went their separate ways, Ari looked over at Cam as they walked down the sidewalk. Feeling bad, she asked, "Sorry you're stuck with me, instead of having fun with your friends." He smiled and nudged her with his elbow. "What are you talking about? You're my friend." He leaned over conspiratorially. You're my special superhero friend," he said, and then punctuated it with an overly emphatic wink. Ari laughed and pushed him away. "Besides, I'd rather hang with you than go to the bars with them anyway. Tank gets crazy when he's drunk and tries to pick fights with hot girls' boyfriends. And when Ozzy drinks, he gets mean and sulky. Leo's cool, but he usually just sits there sketching on napkins because he's too scared to use his ID. I'd probably spend the night playing darts and getting shot down. I mean, getting all the ladies' numbers anyway." Ari laughed, but she checked his intentions to make sure he was being honest, and not just saying all that to make her feel better. And to her surprise, he was being honest. He really did prefer to be with her rather than with his other friends. She looked over at the tall boy who had helped her out in her time of need, and had her back no matter what. The boy who laid himself bare believed her no matter how crazy she sounded, and believed in her, even when she didn't believe in herself. Yeah, he could be silly and annoying sometimes, but he also kept things light in a very serious world. She needed that. "Cam, you're awesome," she said, trying to tell him how much she appreciated him without embarrassing them both. He looked surprised at first, but then he put on a cocky smile. "You don't have to tell me. I know." Ari threw up her hands. "And then you gotta ruin it," she laughed. Cam playfully pushed her away, and that's when someone came up from behind and threaded their arm through hers, taking her completely by surprise. She looked over to see a boy about Cam's age, but only around her height. He had ash blonde hair that reminded her of old dirty dishwater, and kept falling into his pale blue eyes. He had a shifty look about him, but what unnerved her the most was that he was a progeny, and his radiant light was brighter than Cam's. The brighter the light, the more powerful the ability. He quickly guided her down an alleyway that was directly to their left. "I've been sent here to fetch you, Ariana Reyes." Cam ran after them and shoved the creep away from Ari. "What the hell do you think you're doing, guy?" The kid looked like he was about to fight back, but when he saw that he was no match against Cam physically, he backed down. Ari figured he was wearing the dark clothes and a trench coat, despite the summer heat, to hide how scrawny he really was. He stood up straight to try and look more intimidating. "She's coming with me." "The hell she is," Cam said, moving in threateningly. "Who sent you to fetch me?" Ari asked, trying to step between them. "Mr. Reinhold has been expecting you, and he's tired of waiting, so he sent me to bring you to him," the kid said in a self-important way. "How did he know where to find me?" The kid smirked and raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Reinhold has many powerful friends." The way he said the word powerful made her nervous. If all his friends were like this kid, maybe going to this Reinhold guy wasn't the best idea after all. She wasn't getting a good vibe from him at all. He was just a little too eager to prove himself, and he was willing to do anything to get the job done. Well, you can tell Mr. Reinhold thanks, but I changed my mind. I'd rather stay here. The kid looked disgusted and angry at her refusal. No one says no to Mr. Reinhold. You're coming with me whether you like it or not. He grabbed her arm roughly and started to drag her away. Just like Adam had taught her to, Ari pulled her arm out of the kid's grasp and stepped back into a fighting stance. Cam picked the kid up by grabbing the front of his shirt and trench coat and slammed him up against the brick wall. She's not going anywhere with you, and if you lay a hand on her again, I'll break it. You got that, asshat? The kid, struggling in Cam's grasp, shouted over at Ari, "Tell your stupid boyfriend to get off me, or you'll both be sorry." Cam slammed him against the wall again. "First off, gross. She's not my girlfriend. I prefer women, not girls." He glanced over at Ari. "No offense, Pipes." "None taken," she assured him. "Second," he slammed him again, "who do you think you are, pushing little girls around and threatening people?" The kid glared at Cam, seething with anger. "I'm your worst nightmare," he said through clenched teeth. Cam dropped him and busted out laughing. "Did you seriously just say that? Good Lord, that's hilarious." He laughed some more, then straightened his face and said in a gravelly voice, "Are you Batman?" He doubled over, laughing even harder. The kid got up and glared at Cam, circling around them and blocking off the exit to the street. He had the damaged look of a kid who had been bullied most of his life. Looking into his eyes, Ari saw that it had warped him into something twisted and dangerous. Cam was still laughing, but Ari was worried, and her scalp started to tingle. This kid had a powerful ability, and he looked like he was about to use it. Ari tugged on the sleeve of Cam's shirt. "What are you trying to do, huh?" Ari tugged on the sleeve of Cam's shirt. Cam?" she said, trying to get his attention. "Chill out." Mwah. Cam?" she said, trying to get his attention while keeping her eyes on the kid. "You won't be laughing when I burn your face off, douchebag," the kid warned, the color rising in his face. Cam stopped laughing and looked up. "What was that?" The kid held out his hand in front of him. A blue ball of flame appeared above his palm. Cam and Ari gasped and stepped back. "Dude, calm down," Cam said as he put his arm in front of Ari to shield her. The kid had an evil grin that reminded Ari of the Grinch. "Not such a big hero now, are you?" "Hey man, we can talk this out," Cam said, walking backwards and pulling Ari with him by the back of her tank top. The kid shook his head. "Too late for that hot shot. You should have just let me take her." He launched the fireball at Cam like a baseball. Cam ducked just in time for it to miss and hit the pavement behind him, setting some fresh trash on fire. He looked at the kid in shock. "You just threw a fireball at my head! At my head!" The kid nodded. "And I'll do it again if you don't hand the girl over to me now." He made another blue fireball appear in his hand. Ari looked into his eyes and saw that he had every intention of killing Cam. "Run!" she screamed as she pushed Cam out of the way of the next fireball. She saw the path they needed to take to get them out of there the fastest. She told Cam to follow her, then took 3 running steps and leaped up onto the top of the dumpster sitting against the building to their left. She then jumped across the alley to the fire escape on the other side. Quickly, she swung herself up and flipped over to the rooftop of the previous building. Cam followed her, barely missing another fireball. He jumped from the fire escape and somersaulted as he landed on the roof. They heard the kid scream from below, "This isn't over!" Cam and Ari ran and jumped from rooftop to rooftop until they felt like they had put enough distance between themselves and the psycho fireball kid. They found a drain pipe that they could climb down on the backside of a building, and then jump down onto a ledge, walk to the corner and climb down to the top of a cement wall, and jump down to the sidewalk. As they stood there, leaning against the wall, catching their breaths, they looked over at each other in disbelief. "Did that really just happen?" Ari asked. I had no idea that fire manipulation was a possible progeny ability. That's mind-blowing. Who knows what other kinds of crazy, bizarre abilities are out there? Cam shrugged his shoulders as he pulled his hair back in that samurai look of his. I don't know, but Pyro Joe looked like he really wanted to fry me. He did, Ari answered gravely. He wanted to kill you. Cam shook his head in disgust. That kid has problems. I don't know who this Mr. Rainhold guy is, but I think you better stay as far away from him as you can. I was thinking the same thing, Ari responded. Cass had told her that some things she saw didn't always happen, so maybe Canada was one of them. Looks like I'll be crashing with you for a while then. Cam ruffled her hair. That's fine with me, Pipes. Saved my hide back there. The least I can do is put up with your stinking face for a while longer. She laughed and knocked his hand away. Speaking of home, let's go before Pyro Joe finds us again. He chuckled. The name fits him, doesn't it? She nodded in agreement. And then they started walking towards the nearest L train stop. They made it just in time for the next train, but they had to hurry in order to get on board before the doors closed. Just as they were about to get on the train, Ari saw some men in dark suits coming up the stairs to the platform, briskly walking towards them. Ari pushed Cam through the train doors and jumped on just as the doors were closing behind them. The suits stopped short and looked at her through the windows on the door. Her scalp was tingling so bad it hurt. The train pulled away and she turned around to face Cam. His face was pale as he held onto the handrail. Were those guys the suits you were talking about? Ari nodded slowly. I'm so sorry I dragged you into this, Cam. Now they'll be after you too. She felt tears of frustration prickle behind her eyes. She looked down at her shoes. How could she have done this to him? She selfishly put someone she cared for in danger again. When will I learn? Cam tilted her head up with his finger in an attempt to make her look at him. Hey, let's get this straight. I'm the one that dragged you kicking and screaming into my world, not the other way around. He let go of her chin and scanned the train car. Now we just need to figure out how to get out of this predicament. Ari thought about what to do next. They'll be waiting for us at the next stop. Cam rubbed the back of his head, looking towards the back of the train car. Then I guess we get off before the next stop, he said with a devilish smile. He jogged to the back of the train towards the door to the space that led to the next car. Ari followed him, dodging people's legs and personal belongings. No one on the train was paying attention to them as they passed by. They were too engrossed in their own lives. Cam opened the back door and raised his voice so he could be heard over the outside noise. Okay, this is going to be tricky, but you're going to have to trust me and jump exactly when I tell you to. Got it? Ari nodded, not quite sure what he was thinking. They moved out between the cars, and Cam closed the door behind them. Ari quickly stuck her head out between the cars to look ahead, and she saw that the train was moving towards an elevated bridge that went over a full road full of cars. We're going to jump onto that, Cam yelled while pointing to a small maintenance platform on the side of the bridge. The train was rapidly approaching the platform. All right, jump when I say, he yelled into her ear, and she nodded. 3, 2, 1, now! They both jumped before the train reached the platform, letting the train's momentum fling them forward. Ari barely made it and started to fall backwards, but Cam grabbed her and pulled her onto the platform. After the train passed, they both nervously laughed in relief at what they had just pulled off. Come on, Cam said as he jumped down and grabbed one of the girders under the bridge. He moved hand over hand towards one of the posts holding the bridge up and swung over. Like a monkey, he climbed with his hands and feet down the iron post, all the way to the sidewalk below. Ari watched him maneuver the trusses and decided to climb down the lamppost that was connected to the platform. When she jumped down beside him, he shrugged. Well, if you want to do it the easy way. Ari smirked and rolled her eyes. They ran down the sidewalk in the general direction of Hawk's store. That's when Ari saw a black sedan coming down the road towards them. She stopped and clutched onto Cam's arms. She turned around and saw another sedan coming from the opposite way. Cam, the black sedans! They're suits! They're closing in on us! Cam looked around, then took her hand and led them down a side street. The sun was setting behind the buildings, making the shadows elongate and darken. They ran a few blocks, then cut across to a residential street full of small trees and townhouses. A police car was coming down the street in their direction. The flashers beamed when the headlights shone on Cam and Ari. "Are you kidding me? The cops are after us too?" Cam exclaimed in disbelief. Ari's scalp was tingling nonstop now. "I told you the suits were connected. They're not messing around now." "Follow me," he said, and he quickly hurtled over a fence into someone's side yard. "We need to get out of Chicago," he yelled over his shoulder as they ran as fast as they could through the yard towards a back alley. They jumped onto some trash cans and vaulted over a brick wall onto the road on the other side. "Cam, wait!" Ari yelled before he started to run again. "We need to go back to the apartment. I can't leave without my bag." Cam turned back. "No effing way, are you crazy? You know that place is going to be swarming with suits and their cop friends by now. We have to. My bag has my passport, Cass's ring, and all of my money. We can't go anywhere without money." Cam puffed out a frustrated breath. "Fine," he said, and then tried to get his bearings. "This way." They ran off down another side street. They were about halfway back to the store when another black sedan started to follow them again. Ari wanted to go into hyperspeed mode, but she couldn't leave Cam behind. "How the hell do they keep finding us?" Cam yelled. Ari only had to think about it for a second. "Your cell phone! Cam, get rid of it!" A pained look flashed across his face, but he quickly pulled it out of his pocket and threw it in the open window of a passing car. The black sedan was gaining on them. "Don't let them get close! They have guns!" Ari warned. "Screw that!" Cam yelled as he leaped onto a parked car and then jumped and swung himself up onto the crossbar of a traffic light that was connected to a lamppost. He stood up and balanced his way towards the second story of a building, then jumped off the edge and clung to the window ledge. He climbed his way up to the third story, then up to the roof. This kid's like freaking Spider-Man. Ari did exactly what Cam did, and he helped pull her onto the roof. They ran and jumped from rooftop to rooftop. When the available rooftops ran out, they got down and ran through the back alleys until they were about a block away from the store. Cam stopped. "Wait, I have an idea. We can't go running in there guns a-blazing. We need to scope out the situation first. Follow me." He led her back onto the main sidewalk and quickly went through the doors of Hawk's apartment building. Ari ran over to the elevator and pushed the button to go up. The lights over the doors indicated that the elevator was on the 19th floor. "That'll take too long. Come on," Cam said as he ran over to the door that led to the stairs. Ari followed him. "But isn't going up the stairs going to take just as long?" He opened the door to the stairwell and they went through. "Not the way I do it," Cam said with a smirk. He ran up a couple steps, then climbed up onto the handrail, stood up, and jumped onto the rail of the next flight of stairs, skipping the stairs altogether. He quickly jumped back and forth up the center of the stairs, moving up flight by flight. Ari shook her head and then followed his lead. When they got up to the 10th floor, Cam climbed over the rail and ran up the last couple of steps to open the door to Hawk's floor. "Hawk lives in apartment 1005. They ran down the hallway, and Cam knocked on the door and waited, but no one answered. "Screw it. I really hope Hawk doesn't have an alarm system." He pulled out his wallet and took out what looked like lock picks. He inserted them into the lock and started fiddling around. Ari's mouth fell open in shock. Cam glanced over and chuckled. "Pick your jaw up, Pipes. I'm not a burglar. I was just bored one day and Googled how to pick a lock, thinking it might come in handy one day." The lock clicked and Cam grinned. "And I was right." He turned the knob, opening the door. They waited a second, making sure no blaring alarms were going to go off. When they were met with silence, they quickly ducked inside. It was getting dark out, but they didn't turn on any lights that would announce that they were there. "Ooh, swanky. Hawk's got style. Or at least Marissa does," Cam said as he looked around. The apartment was large and tastefully decorated. Everything was high-end and looked expensive. "What are we doing here, Cam? Especially with no one home?" Ari didn't feel right breaking into Hawk's apartment. She saw a family portrait on the wall. It was weird to see Hawk away from the store environment. His wife was a pretty blue-eyed blonde, and little Lucy looked just like her, but with Hawk's darker coloring. "We're here because of this," he said, opening a sliding door that led out to a balcony. He motioned for her to come over, then ducked down below a railing that had large rectangles of metal grating, which they could hide behind. Ari followed his example, and they peeked through the gaps. Her stomach dropped. Cam was right. The store was surrounded by black sedans and cop cars. How are we going to do this? Sweet baby Jesus, the FBI is down there too. What do they think we did, kill the president? Cam scanned around, focusing in on various spots. They have guys staked out all over the place. Ari, this is impossible. Let's just scrap it and get out of here. I can't, Cam. I need my bag, she said simply, then turned and leaned against the metal and tried to think. How could they possibly do this without getting caught? Then she had it. What if I went into hyperspeed mode and pushed myself to go as fast as I possibly could? Then maybe I'd be going so fast that no one would be able to see me. It's the only way. Cam, I have an idea. Is there anything you want me to get for you from the apartment? Ari, are you crazy? There's no way I'm going to let you go over there. It's suicide. She grabbed his shoulders and looked him in the eye. I need you to trust me on this. Stop wasting time and tell me what you want. He looked like he was about to protest, but he saw the intensity in her eyes and relented. I have a stash of cash in the back left corner of my sock drawer. Is that it? Oh, and there's a knife that should be right next to the cash. It was my grandpa's old army knife. Ari nodded. All right, if I'm not back in 5 minutes, go on without me. Ari, how are you? She cut him off by punching his arm. Just trust me. I'm a superhero, remember? He smiled and nodded reluctantly. Yeah, I remember. Ari took a deep breath. I'll be back as soon as I can, she said, squeezing his hand. Then she tapped into her inner energy and tried to go faster than she ever had before. Ooh, my coffee sitting on the dashboard is now hot coffee. Yay! Oh, screw it. I'll just finish it off. Cam was about to squeeze her hand back when all of a sudden Ari disappeared with a whoosh of air. He sat there in shock. One moment she was there, and the next she was gone. Holy cow, she really is a superhero. Cam turned his head back around to see the store through the grating. That's when he realized that she had amped him. He could see through the walls into the store and the apartment. The place was swarming with suits and feds. Oh man, Hawk's gonna be so pissed. Cam looked in the apartment and focused in to see a guy snooping around and going towards Ari's alcove. He saw the shower curtains shiver slightly. Then his bureau shook just a tiny bit. If his eyesight hadn't been heightened, he would have missed it. Then a second later, the guy doubled over as if he'd been punched. Was she invisible? How did she get over there so fast? Ari pushed herself as hard as she could. She practically flew down the stairs, her feet barely touching the ground. The people in the lobby weren't just moving in slow motion. They looked almost stationary. A man was holding the front door open for a woman, so Ari breezed through the open door and out onto the sidewalk. It felt like she was gliding, just like in the dream she'd had with Absalom. She saw the feds in suits in front of the store. They were going inside to search for who knows what. She zipped by all of them and went back up the stairs. The apartment door was open and there was someone inside. It was a suit. She sped by him, too focused on getting her bag to see what he looked like. Ari opened the curtains and got her bag and put the envelope of cash in with the rest of her money. She put on her dark gray hoodie over her white tank top to camouflage herself a bit more, and then stuffed the rest of her clothes into the bag, all while in hyperspeed. She left the alcove, closed the curtains behind her, and went over to Cam's bureau. Opening the top drawer, she found the cash and the knife right away and stuffed them in her bag. Then she slipped on her bag and turned to leave. That's when she saw the suit's face. Briggs. She couldn't stop moving. He'd see her if she did. So she ran around him in circles to get a good look at him. She'd know that stony face and cold metal gray eyes anywhere. He looked like he was moving towards her alcove, probably wanting to go through her stuff. You're too late, Briggs. It's already gone. He was wearing a dark suit like his buddies, and not the lame substitute teacher outfit he'd had on the last time she saw him. She thought he looked kind of like an evil James Bond. Not being able to help herself any longer, she punched him right in the gut on her last circuit around. That's for trying to kidnap me and ruining my childhood, jackhole. Ari didn't punch him as hard as she knew she could in hyperspeed because she didn't want to kill him. She just wanted to hit him hard enough to give him a bad time. Running down the stairs and out the front door, she noticed that everyone had barely moved, but some of them looked confused and were turning towards the back stairs. Ari thought they must be reacting to the draft of air she made as she passed by on the way up. Pushing herself harder, she glided down the street, squeezing through the door as it was closing behind the couple. Ari raced up the stairs, almost giving herself vertigo from going up the 10 flights so fast. She rushed through the door to the 10th floor and went through the unlocked door of room 1005. She closed the door behind her and finally slowed down when she reached the sliding doors to the balcony. She leaned against the door frame, feeling almost totally drained. That was the longest and fastest she had ever been in hyperspeed mode. Cam's head snapped around and he jumped in surprise. Go! You just disappeared! And now you're over there! Did you just teleport? Ari chuckled weakly, shaking her head. No, I just went really, really fast. She was starting to feel lightheaded, but the last thing they needed was for her to black out. Cam, I need something to eat right now. I don't want to pass out. Cam ran over to the kitchen and opened the fridge. Do you want spaghetti or chicken? Yes, she said, stumbling over to find some utensils. Cam laughed. Okay, both it is. He took out the plastic containers of food and put them on the counter. He went back to the fridge to look for something to drink and heard her opening the containers. Hey, do you want me to heat those up for... He began, but when he looked over, she was already halfway through the spaghetti. You? No thanks, I'm fine. Keep it coming, please, she said around a mouthful of food. Okie doke, he said, and kept rummaging through the fridge. By the time Ari felt like she was going to pass out, she had eaten nearly half the contents of Hawk's refrigerator. When Cam noticed she was finally slowing down, he asked, Did you hit that guy in the apartment? He deserved it. Ari licked the last bit of pudding off her spoon and rinsed it off in the sink. He was the guy that tried to kidnap me back in Georgia. Wait, you saw that? You amped me just before you disappeared. I was able to see it through the wall. I saw the curtains and the bureau shiver a bit. Then the guy doubled over. I blinked and you were back here. But that's not possible. I was too far away to amp you, she said as she absently washed the dishes out of habit. Cam gave her a wry smile. After what you just did, I think we should open our minds to the fact that when it comes to you, anything is possible. Maybe I was still holding his hand when I tapped into my energy, and I transferred some to him. Cam plucked off a grape from the bunch he was holding in his hand and threw it into the air. He was about to catch it in his mouth when he froze, and the grape hit him on the forehead. Uh-oh. Marissa and Lucy are coming off the elevator. We gotta split. Ari quickly dried off her hands and put her backpack on. You could still see through the walls? Cam nodded, then pulled her back out onto the balcony, shutting the curtains and closing the sliding doors behind them. Yep. You don't even want to know what the guy in 1007 is up to, he whispered. Now what? Ari whispered back. Cam put his finger to his lips, then motioned for her to follow him. He hurtled over the side of the balcony and onto a ledge that went around the building. With her heart in her throat, she followed him over, and they inched their way onto the fire escape. Hurtling over the railing, they climbed down to the bottom. The sun had fully set, so Ari hoped it was dark enough that no one had spotted them. When they reached the bottom ladder, they jumped down on top of a dumpster, then back down to the pavement. Then Cam started laughing. What's so funny? Ari asked, confused. Cam shook his head. Hawk is gonna be so confused. He busted out his best Hawk impression. Why the hell did someone break in and eat all our food? The situation was pretty ridiculous, so Ari had to laugh too.
No, officer, the burglar didn't steal anything. He just ate all of our leftovers and did the dishes, Cam mimicked in Hawk's deep voice.
They both cracked up, but they sobered up quickly when they saw a black sedan coming up the street on their left. Ari pulled up her hood and they ran as fast as they could, sticking to the shadows as much as possible. Cam led them to a busy sidewalk, and they weaved through the pedestrians, trying to put as much distance as they could between them and their pursuers. But the sedans kept coming from all directions. Ari knew the suits were hurting them, but there was nothing she could do about it. They were everywhere. Cam started climbing up the corner where two buildings met, propelling himself back and forth between the ledges. Ari followed him up, and when they reached the top, they ran and jumped down about 10 feet onto the top level of a parking garage. It was a poor choice, because while they tried to figure out what to do next, 4 sedans drove up on the nearly empty parking level. Cam and Ari looked back the way they came, but it was only a one-way jump. The building was too far away and too high for them to get back up. They were trapped. The sedans hedged them in, blinding them with their high beams. Ari's heart was racing out of control, fear and panic blocking her thinking. The cars parked around them. The occupants got out and stood menacingly silhouetted in front of their headlights. A tall shadow stepped forward. "You put up a good fight, Miss Riley, but the chase is over. You and your friends are coming with us." "You good, Bubba?" Ari knew the gruff, surly voice belonged to Briggs. I should have punched him harder. "The hell we are!" Cam yelled. "There's nowhere for you to go. The whole city thinks that you two are armed terrorists. They won't stop until you're in custody, which would lead you back to us anyway." Briggs reached for something inside his coat. Judging by the silhouette, Ari thought it looked like one of those strange guns the suits had back in Savannah. "Why can't you just leave us alone?" Ari screamed, fighting back the dread that was threatening to overwhelm her. "Hi, baby." Briggs shook his head like he was trying to explain a very simple concept to someone who just didn't get it. "I told you back in Savannah that your gifts were meant to be shared. And judging by that little stunt you pulled tonight," he said, rubbing the place where she had punched him, "my boss will be even more interested in you now." "You don't even know the half of what she's capable of. She'll crush you," Cam yelled, trying to intimidate them. Ari elbowed him in the ribs. "Shut up, Cam, you're not helping," she whispered. Briggs gave a mirthless chuckle and aimed his gun at Ari. "Playtime is over, children. It's time to go to sleep." He shot the gun, and without hesitation, Ari's wrist came up to block what had been aimed at her neck. She looked at her wrist to see what looked like a tranquilizer dart. It had pierced the leather cuff Jamie had given Ari for her birthday, saving her from the serum. "Thank you, Jamie." Adrenaline coursed through her veins, clearing her thoughts. "Cam, hold on to me, and don't let go no matter what." He grasped her hand tightly. "I hope this works." Briggs saw what she was about to do. "Shoot them now!" Ari tapped into her inner energy, grabbed Cam around the waist, hoisted him up under her arm, and surged forward just as 3 tranquilizer darts were fired towards them. The darts froze in midair. Ari looked down at Cam, whose pale face and wide eyes barely comprehended what was going on, but he managed to grasp her arm in a death grip, so Ari was able to take him along with her, and that's all that mattered. As they passed by Briggs, Ari couldn't help herself from kicking his feet out from under him. Then she got an idea. As she sped around the cars, she plucked the dart from her cuff and sliced all their tires. Then she glided out of there as fast as she could. Ari tried not to bang Cam against anything as she went, knowing that if he hit anything while they were going at that speed, it would pulverize his bones. They couldn't go too far, though. She didn't want to deplete all her energy like she had before. She stopped in the shadow of a stoop by the newsstand. Placing Cam on his feet, he immediately let go to lean against the side of the stoop, looking shell-shocked. "What the hell?" he asked, looking straight ahead. "Sorry, it was the only way we could get out of there," she said while getting out some cash from her backpack.
It was like being on a roller coaster from hell. Everything was a blur, and it felt like my belly button was getting sucked through my nose. Did I pee my pants? No, you're good. Ari laughed. You get it together while I go get some candy bars from the newsstand guy over there. Cam bent over and put his hands on his knees, taking deep breaths. Okay, he breathed out. Ari made sure her hood was covering her hair and shadowed most of her face. She walked over and bought all the Snickers and payday candy bars the guy had. She horked down 5 bars right there on the street before putting the rest of the bars in her bag. As she was zipping it back up and putting it on, she saw an FBI car driving towards her with its internal lights blinking. The passenger door opened and a guy yelled for her to freeze. Not a chance. Cam, run! He burst out of the shadow of the stoop and followed her down the street. The FBI agent followed close behind. Ari looked around and saw a man going through the metal gate to an apartment complex. Cam! She yelled, pointing to the gate. They ran as fast as they could, and Cam caught the gate just before it latched and locked them out. They ran through and quickly closed it behind them so the agent couldn't follow. Dashing into the building, they ran to the stairs, taking their shortcut up the middle of the staircase. They heard a gunshot against metal about halfway up, and then the entrance door burst open. They made it to the top floor and found a door that led up to the roof. Looking around quickly, they chose their course. They ran and jumped over the 15-foot gap to the next building. The roof was slanted, so it was a bit tricky, but they managed. Running quickly, Cam jumped over to the next building. Ari was behind him and just about to jump when the agent shouted from behind her, "Stop!" He had followed them up to the roof and managed to distract Ari enough to throw her off balance as she jumped, causing her to tweak her angle as she landed on the next building. She hissed in pain as Cam climbed up to a higher level of the roof. She tried to follow quickly, but her ankle made her wince as she limped over to the wall. The agent caught up and jumped over to the rooftop they were on. He got up and pointed a gun right at her. "Freeze, goddammit, or I'll shoot!" Okay, I kind of weakened that. "Freeze, goddammit, or I'll shoot!" He yelled, winded from the chase. Ari put her hands up and turned around to face him. She looked into his eyes and saw that he was telling the truth. "Please don't shoot me," she pleaded. She quickly glanced up over her shoulder at the higher level to see if Cam was still there, but he wasn't. The agent blinked and lowered his gun just a fraction. Her hood had fallen off during the chase, and when she looked up, the floodlight hanging on the wall behind her must have illuminated her face. "Jesus, you're just a kid," he said in disbelief. "I'm not a terrorist, I swear. It's a conspiracy thought up by a group led by a guy named Alexander. They've been chasing me for months." "Doesn't matter. I'll still have to take you in." He lifted his gun again. "Now, I don't want to shoot you, so just come with me quietly and we'll get this straightened out." Ari panicked. "I can't, don't you see? They've infiltrated the FBI. They'll just get to me from there." She turned back towards the wall, trying to ignore the pain shooting up her leg. "Don't move, kid! I mean it! I will shoot!" Ari heard a whistle come from atop the wall behind her. She looked up, expecting Cam. With a jolt of fear, she saw that it was Shiny Man, and he was reaching his arm down to pull her up the wall. Up close, she could see that his eyes were a bluish-green color, and they had an opalescent quality, just like hers. "He's like me." For some reason, she couldn't read his intentions, and his energy felt fundamentally different from the other progenies. But if he helped her get away from the agent, she'd take it. Ari grabbed onto his left hand with both of hers, the agent yelling in the background. Shiny Man took out a gun with his right hand and shot the agent while pulling her up like she weighed nothing. The gunshot was so loud that it made her ears ring. The agent screamed and took a wild shot that made the light on the wall shatter. Ari felt a searing pain pierce her right shoulder blade. Ari felt a searing pain pierce her right shoulder blade. She gasped in shock at the pain radiating down her back, as if someone had just hammered a rail spike into her. Some of the shattered glass must have got me, she thought. Shiny Man finished lifting her up onto the rooftop, and as soon as she let go, he shot the agent again. "Did you just kill him?" Ari asked worriedly, cradling cradling her right arm against her body. The guy was just doing his job. Shiny Man put his gun away. No, I just shot his foot and his shooting arm. He'll be fine, he said, looking like shooting people wasn't a big deal. He had a muddled Britishy accent that was hard to place. Okay, hold on, let me try this again. No, I just shot his foot. No, that's too strong. That's too strong. No, I just shot his foot and his shooting arm. He'll be fine, he said, like shooting people wasn't a big deal. He had a muddled Britishy accent that was hard to place. Was it Irish? Australian? Maybe South African? The man towered over her, wearing a black long-sleeve shirt and dark cargo pants, which were tucked into black military boots. Ari looked over to Cam, who was sitting on the ground, tenderly touching his bruising face. Oh, heck no. Nobody messes with mine. What did you do to Cam? She stepped toward Shiny Man, challenging him. He only looked coldly down at her in response. Cam stood up and walked over. I was just about to come back and get you, but this guy showed up, so I tried to fight him off. Then he backhanded me and called me an idiot. He said he wanted to help us, he explained. Ari looked defiantly at Shiny Man. Whether he was being an idiot or not, nobody hurts my friends, she said, getting into a fighting stance, ignoring the throbbing pain in her back. You feel like a big man beating up on some kids? Her adrenaline was high, making her feel brave. Shiny Man smirked. I'm the lesser of many evils, girl, and I'm the only option you've got right now. Ari couldn't read him, but she could hear the truth in his words. Also, her scalp wasn't tingling, which was a good sign. She had to trust him, for now. Fine. What's the plan? She said, warily eyeing him. We get out of here before any more of them show up, he said, motioning his head towards the agent, calling for backup over his radio. Shiny Man made sure his gun was secured tightly in its holster. Then he looked over at Ari. Take a hold of his arm and we'll sift over to my car. What's sifting? Ari asked, confused. He looked at her like she was stupid. What you just did back at the store to get that bag of yours? Oh, so there's a name for it, huh? Good to know, she thought, then shook her head. Wait, you were watching us? I'm a tracker. It's what I do, he said nonchalantly, taking a hold of Cam's arm. Now grab his other arm and let's get out of here. Ari held on to Cam's right arm, trying to give him a reassuring look. His face crumpled. Oh, please, no, he whimpered, knowing what was coming next. After a quick nod, they sifted together and went faster than Ari had ever been able to go by herself. It felt like their energies were feeding off of each other, propelling them forward. Shiny Man guided them down the street and onto the highway, dodging the motionless cars frozen in place. Her eyesight seemed clearer when she sifted. Everything came into focus around her. Unlike poor Cam, who probably only saw a crazy blurriness swooshing around him. It only took them about 5 seconds to get where his black SUV was parked on a dark street. When they stopped and let go, Cam stumbled over to a trash can, held on for dear life, and vomited. Shiny Man narrowed his eyes and looked at Ari in that weird, part angry, part confused way he had back in Savannah. What? She asked. Why do you keep looking at me like that? He continued to stare, making her think that he wasn't going to answer her. But then he said, because I've never seen someone without an energy signature before. He looked as though he was trying to figure out what was wrong with her. It's how I track people. The energy signature makes a path behind them and shows me where they've been. She assumed he meant a person's radiant energy leaves a trail behind them that he could follow. And when she thought about it, it made sense. Energy doesn't just disappear, it leaves traces behind. Then, as if something clicked in her mind, she saw Shiny Man's and Cam's radiant light trailing behind them, like a map showing where they had been through the city. He was right. Each path was different, kind of like a signature or a fingerprint. She was able to hone in on one path at a time, making the millions of other paths swirling around her fade away. Holy crap, I did it again! I learned another ability! Hoping that she was able to hide the shock on her face, she tried to distract him with another question. If I don't have a signature, then how did you track me to Chicago? I'm good at what I do, he said simply. I tracked you to New Orleans, but then I had some important matters to tend to up there in Chicago. I was planning on going back down to pick up the trail back later, but you have a habit of augmenting people's energies, and when the path of Prince Charming over there started sparking like a firecracker, I followed, and it led me to you. They both looked over at Cam, who had just gotten done vomiting up the contents of his stomach into the trash can. He looked over and gave them a shaky thumbs up. I think I'm getting better at this shifting thing, he said optimistically. As Shiny Man walked over to the driver's side of the SUV, he said, "Get your arses in the car." Then he pointed at Cam, "But I swear, if you puke in there, I'll throw you out while it's moving, yeah?" Cam nodded. "Don't worry, I don't think I have anything left anyway." He got in the back behind the driver's seat and slouched down, holding onto his stomach, closing his eyes. Ari got in the other side and sat by him, neither of them wanting to sit up by Shiny Man. With the adrenaline wearing off, her whole right side was stiff with a sharp, throbbing pain. It was hard to move, and her right hand was starting to get tingly. Shiny Man started the SUV and pulled out onto the street. Unable to sit back, she leaned forward. The pain was getting worse, and she had to constantly blow out streams of air to prevent herself from screaming. Shiny Man glanced back at her. "What's the matter?" Ari grimaced. "I think I got cut by a piece of glass when that light shattered back there on the roof," she said, gingerly slipping her right arm through the strap of her backpack. She slid it off onto the floor between her and Cam's feet. Her back felt warm and wet. Cam sat up. "Where?" Ari leaned further forward, resting her head on the back of the passenger seat. "My right shoulder blade." Cam looked over and gasped. "Oh my God, Ari, you've been shot!" he said, panicking, "and you're bleeding all over." It was worse than she thought, and she knew it must be serious if Cam called her Ari instead of Pipes. She could feel the blood oozing down her back and pooling in the waistband of her jeans. "Bloody hell. Take off her jacket and staunch the wound. Quick!" Shiny Man's voice was authoritative as he laid his foot on the gas. Cam unzipped Ari's hoodie and gently took it off, balling it up. He pressed it firmly over the wound, making her yell out in pain. "Sorry, but I have to stop the bleeding," he explained, brushing her bangs out of her face and tucking them behind her ear. Skin beating with cold sweat, she was beginning to feel lightheaded. "Stay with me, Ari," Cam pleaded, noticing her face getting paler. "Hurry up, man!" "I'm going as fast as I can, boy. We'll be there in a minute," Shiny Man said as he expertly weaved through the traffic. He made a sharp turn off the highway and down a road that led to the industrial part of town. Cam held onto Ari so she wouldn't get knocked around too much, still putting pressure over her wound. "Watch it! You're hurting her!" "Do you want me to go fast or not?" he yelled back. Cam looked around at the factories and industrial yards on either side of the road. "Where are we going?" "We can't take her to the hospital, so I'll have to stitch her up at my place." Ari looked around, feeling nervous. Where does he live? A junkyard? Her vision was starting to get starry around the edges, like static on a TV, and it was excruciating to breathe. Who knew your shoulder blade moved so much when you breathed? Cam looked around dubiously. "Yeah, it doesn't look like he's going to..." Cam looked around dubiously. "Yeah, it doesn't look like he's going to take us to his kill chamber and chop us up into little pieces at all," he said, trying to make it sound like a joke. But the nervous look in his eyes gave him away. "Not at all." Shiny Man's eyes shot up to the rearview mirror so he could stare at Cam. "I haven't ruled it out yet. I can use the girl, but I don't need you. Remember that." Cam laughed nervously, looked over at Ari and whispered, "He doesn't mean it." He shook his head. But it seemed like he was trying to convince himself more than Ari. Her other hand and her feet were starting to feel tingly as well. "How are you doing back there, girl?" Shiny Man asked, glancing back over at his shoulder at her. "I'm all right. It doesn't hurt as much anymore. I'm just sleepy." He cursed and cut through an industrial yard. "What? What is it?" Cam asked, panicking. "She's going into shock. Stay awake, girl. Keep talking to me." It was hard for Ari to concentrate. Her thoughts were getting fuzzy. "What's your name?" She was tired of having to call him Shiny Man. "Lothan Kale." That's different, Cam said. So what do you want us to call you, Lothan? Mr. Kale? I go by Kale, but you, he said, indicating Cam, can call me sir. Cam narrowed his eyes. Mr. Grumpy Pants it is, then, he whispered to Ari. She chuckled, and a spasm of pain shot through her body. Don't make me laugh, Cam. It hurts. Keep talking, girl, Kale demanded. It was hard to think. Why do you want my necklace so bad? Let's just say I'm an avid collector, he evaded. And it would have been my bloody necklace if I'd gotten to that store earlier. How did you find it, anyway? It was hard to organize her thoughts. It called to me, just like the other one did. His head whipped around to look back at her. You have another one? Yeah, I found it in New Orleans. Do they call to you too? No, Kale said. He pushed a button on his high-tech dashboard, and a door rose up on an old factory building, leading to an underground garage. I'm just going to put this memo out there real quick before I continue on. This video might shut off, and I might have to make a part 2, because another part of the problem of why I've been gone a few weeks is I had run out of space on my phone, and I had to delete a few things, but this video is running so long. So if it shuts off, this is part 1. Look forward to part 2 shortly. But hopefully we're going to make this through it. I think we're almost done with this chapter. Back to it. As he pulled into the garage, all the overhead lights clicked on, and Cam, finally able to get a good look at Ari's back, cursed under his breath. Kale parked the SUV by an expensive-looking sports car and hopped out. He opened Cam's door and told him to help move Ari towards him. Cam helped her over, then got out of the back seat. Give me her jacket and help her sit up straight. Cam handed the blood-soaked hoodie and then ran over to the other side of the car and slid into the back seat to help hold her up on her bad side. It was getting harder for Ari to hold her own head up, but she tried her best so they could do what they needed to do. Kale shook out the hoodie, stretched it out by holding on to the ends of the sleeves, and rolled it up like he was about to flick it like a towel. He wrapped it around her back, brought the two ends under her armpits. She winced in pain as he tied the sleeves as tight as he could in front of her chest, making a makeshift tourniquet. He slid the left arm under her knees, then gently wrapped the other one around her lower back, and easily lifted her out of the car. She cradled her right arm against her stomach, trying to hold it still with her left hand. When he shifted her in his arms, another spasm of pain shot through her, and he could feel the warm blood soaking through the tourniquet. Not able to lift her head any longer, she rested it against Kale's massive shoulder. I felt like there was a good possibility she could bleed out, but for some strange reason, it didn't seem to bother her as much as she thought it might. It was as if her mind was being merciful by numbing the fear and panic of dying. Her eyelids were so heavy, she started to go in and out of consciousness. "Wake up, Ari!" Cam yelled. Ari opened her eyes and tried to focus on him. Her heartbeat felt like a hummingbird trapped in her chest. "Make yourself useful and open those doors to the lift. Press the button for the second level," Kale instructed as he made his way over to the elevator on the back wall. Cam ran ahead and pushed up the wooden grates, then opened the metal cage doors to the old-fashioned elevator. He waited as Kale rushed in with Ari in his arms and pushed the button for the second level. As Ari rested against Kale's shoulder, she noticed his iridescent tattoos poking out from under the collar of his shirt. They reminded her of the doodles she would make during class. Strange thoughts kept popping through her mind, like how something about Kale seemed strangely familiar, and that his cologne smelled really good. The elevator stopped and Cam opened up the doors. Kale carried Ari through the industrial loft apartment to a wooden table in the dining area by the kitchen, sitting her backwards in one of his chairs that surrounded it. He quickly checked her back, then walked off towards the kitchen. She leaned forward, resting her head on her left arm on top of the chair's back, and keeping her right arm against her side. Cam came around and sat in a chair facing her. He carefully held her right hand, which had been resting on her knee. Kale came back and handed her a small glass of what she thought was water. She was parched.
so she clutched it in her left hand and gulped it down. An intense burning coursed through her throat and into her stomach. "Gah! What was that?" She coughed, handing him back the glass. "Vodka," Cale said as he put the bottle on the table beside her. "Did you just give a 13-year-old straight vodka?" Cam demanded in utter belief. "If I don't get that bullet out and sew her up soon, she'll bleed out. I don't have any anesthetic, so drinking the vodka will help dull the pain. Or would you rather I dug around in her back without anything?" "No," Ari said emphatically. Cam reluctantly shook his head. "No, I guess not. That's what I thought. So keep your mouth shut and let me do what I need to do." He poured more into Ari's glass and handed it back to her. "Bottoms up. I'll be right back with my stuff." Ari took the glass back as he stalked off. She drank it down quickly, but this time the burning spread through her whole body. It numbed the pain a bit and somehow made her feel like a heavy balloon. Cam grinned. "How you feeling now, Pipes?" Ari plopped her head back onto her arm and giggled. She didn't know what was so funny, but she felt like laughing all the same. Cam smoothed back Ari's hair. "You still look really crummy, but at least you're smiling like a trooper." Cale came back with a medical bag and a leather case and placed them on the table. He opened up the medical bag and sat down in a chair behind her. He rolled up his sleeves, put on a pair of latex gloves, and undid the makeshift tourniquet. He used a small pair of scissors to cut away some of her tank top so it wouldn't cover the wound. Then he gently pressed on the area where the bullet was lodged in her back, making Ari jerk and hiss in pain. "The bullet must have ricocheted off the lamp before it hit you. It grazed across your scapula before it struck muscle. That's why you're bleeding so much." "What's a scapula?" Cam asked. "My shoulder blade," Ari mumbled into her arm, panting. "How do you know words like acerbic and predicament and not know what a scapula is?" The alcohol was slowing down her thinking processes, but she had been wondering about this for a while. Cam had a way of throwing around random SAT-sounding words in casual conversation. Grams was a fan of those word-of-the-day calendars, and whenever I got in trouble, I had to stand in the corner and memorize a word and its definition. Cale looked over at Cam, unimpressed. "Are you wearing a belt?" Yeah," he answered warily. "Good, take it off and give it to her to bite on. This is going to hurt." Ari grabbed the bottle of vodka on the table and started chugging. Cam stood up and took the bottle away from her, putting it back on the table. "Whoa there, Miss Drinky McDrinkerson. We want to dull the pain, not do permanent damage to your liver." He took off his leather belt and placed it between her teeth. Cale spread iodine around the wound, and Ari bit down on the belt. He took out some tools and started digging around for the bullet in her back. Ari clenched down hard and let out an involuntary scream. It was the most pain she'd ever felt in her life. It took all she had to keep still. "The bullet's in one piece, but it looks like some fabric from your clothes got lodged in there as well," Cale informed them as he worked. Tears leaked out from the corner of her eyes as she squeezed them shut. Her arm and her back felt like they were on fire, incinerating her from the inside. Darkness was encroaching on the periphery of her vision, and she could feel herself starting to pass out. Cam grasped her hands. Oh man, this chapter is going long, but it's almost done. Cam grasped her hand tightly. "Please open your eyes, Ari, and stay with me." She peeked through her lashes, and watched as Cam held her hand. He was unknowingly transferring some of his energy to her, keeping her conscious. It was amazing to see. His energy surged and melded into her where their hands touched, fortifying her. She wondered if he was giving the energy or if she was taking it, or both. She felt a pulling, and something clinked into the empty glass on the table behind her. "I got it all out," Cale said. "Now I just have to sew it up." As Cale got what he needed from the kit, Ari looked up at Cam's worried face. She felt a compulsion to tell him how she felt. She took his belt out of her mouth so she could talk, but the alcohol was making it hard to find the right words. "Cam," she slurred, "you are my best friend. I had 2 best friends back home, but you're my new best friend. You're nice. You helped me, and you're nice. Cam grinned. Aw, Pipes, you're a chatty drunk. And it's kind of annoying when you call me Pipes, but it's also kind of sweet, so I let it slide. And an honest one, too, he said with a slight grimace. Ari popped up her chin on her forearm so she could look in the general direction of his eyes. It was getting really hard to focus. Cam, do you think I'm gonna die? She asked seriously. Because I feel really crappy. It's so hard to stay awake. Her limbs felt cold and heavy now. Cam held her head between his hands. Ari, you are not going to die. I won't let you. He rested the top of his forehead against hers. You're like my little sister, and I'm not going to lose the only family I have left. She could hear the emotion start to choke his voice. Do you hear me? She nodded slightly to show him she understood, but she knew he didn't say the last part as much to her as to the ultimate power that had already taken away his mother and grandmother. I'm stitching you up right now. You're going to be just fine, Kale assured her. She could feel him tugging on her back. Even though it stung, it didn't hurt half as bad as when he took the bullet out. She laid her head back on the crook of her elbow, and her incredibly heavy eyelids started to close. Stay awake, Ari, come on, Cam said, panicking. I'm trying, but it's so hard, she mumbled. I know it's hard, sweets, but you have to keep those pretty blues open for me, he said, clutching her hand and transferring more energy to her. I'd rather look at those than Kale's ugly mug anyway. Ari forced her eyes open and managed a weak smile. That's my girl, Cam said, relieved. Kale gave one last tug. Okay, done with the stitches. Ari heard him open the leather case. It sounded like he was putting something together. That isn't what I think it is it? Cam asked incredulously. Why the hell would you think giving her a tattoo would be a good idea right now? Ari opened her eyes a little wider. What? A tattoo? At this point, she didn't care what happened, as long as she could sleep. Just make sure it isn't lame. Don't listen to her, Cam said dismissively. She's drunk and suffering from massive blood loss. He stood up indignantly. Seriously, what do you think you're doing, man? I'm not gonna let you do this. Kale sighed impatiently. Sit your arse down, boy. Unless you want another black eye to match the one I already gave you, he said while continuing to get his materials ready. She has lost a lot of blood and I don't have any extra pints lying around to replenish it. Her blood pressure is going to get too low soon and her heart will give out. This healing rune is the only option we have. Cam, please, Ari pleaded. She weakly raised her hand for him to take. He sat down quickly, grabbing it, giving her more of his strength. Seeing how pale and sickly she was, he shook his head and then glared at Kale. First alcohol, now tattoos? You, sir, are a very bad influence, he said pointedly. What the hell is a rune anyway? Hold on, baby, we're almost done. Is it going to be shiny like yours, Kale? Ari asked. What are you talking about? They're not shiny, they're just blue, Cam said, like she was delirious. You can't see it, but they're iridescent, like bubbles or the inside of shells, seashells. It's beautiful. Kale was finishing up mixing the ink. It's from the Leviathan. It's from the Leviathan. It's what activates the runes. He rubbed a spot near the stitches with an alcohol wipe. Put the belt back in her mouth. The first rune is always the most painful, and I'm not sure how her skin will take to the Leviathan. What? You don't even know if... Ari cut him off, putting her hand sloppily over his mouth. Her hand felt like a bag of sand. Shh, stop talking and let him work. Kale chuckled. I'm starting to like this kid. Cam ignored him as he put the belt between Ari's teeth again. Kale poised the needle over her skin. Let me know if it's too painful. Ari nodded, and then he started inking her. It stung a little bit, but it was more of an annoying pain, like a bunch of tiny bee stings. Kale paused. Are you okay? Ari nodded, then spat the belt out of her mouth. I'm fine. It doesn't hurt that much. Kale sat back, perplexed. Do you have any other runes on you? He asked. Ari giggled drunkenly. No. He mused, continuing to work on the rune. She knew exactly when he was done with the design. It felt like a link being connected, and her body was flooded with a warm, tingling sensation that washed through her and made all the pain go away. She sighed with relief. You should be all healed up by tomorrow morning, Kale said as he started putting his things away. Just like that? Cam smirked skeptically. I need to get me one of those sparkly tattoos, he said, tenderly touching the swollen, bruising skin around his left eye. Your skin couldn't take it. The ink would burn you straight to the bone, Kale explained. Why? Because you're human, he said simply. Cam's mouth dropped open. Are you saying you're not? Kale looked him in the eyes and nodded. Cam was aghast. What about Ari? The tattoo didn't burn her skin, and she's human, isn't she? No, he said bluntly. Ari's head was reeling. Did Kale just say she wasn't human? Then what was she? Am I the same as you? She asked hopefully. He cleared his throat. We're similar, but not the same. Still trying to figure it out. Are you sure you don't have any other runes on you? No, I think I'd know if I had tattoos on me. What about your head? Kale stood up and started parting her thick hair in different ways to see down to her scalp. Well, bugger me. Cam stood up and started looking too. Holy cow, Ari! You have blue tattoos on the back of your scalp! What? How could this be possible? But then she remembered how short her hair had been when Jean-Baptiste first found her in the water. Did the people who had shackled her also shave her head and tattoo runes all over it? And these aren't just any runes, Kale said, continuing to part her hair to see more of them. These were done by a master. I don't even know what some of these mean. I'm so tired. Can I sleep now? Ari begged. The pain was gone, but her body felt heavy and weak. She could feel herself blacking out. No, Ari! Cam yelled, concerned. It's all right, boy. The danger has passed. Her body's just trying to heal itself now. Kale got up to put his stuff away, and when he came back, he had a t-shirt and a couple blankets. He laid one blanket down on a brown leather couch in the living room area in the loft. Then he came back, put the large t-shirt over her head, and ripped the remnants of her bloody tank top apart and pulled it out from under the bottom of the shirt. Gently picking her up, he carried her over and sat her on the couch. As he took off her shoes and threw them to the side, Ari lay down on her stomach, not able to sit up any longer, and let her right arm hang off the side. She was barely aware of Kale laying the other blanket on top of her, leaving her feet exposed, then tugging on the bottom of her pant legs and pulling off her blood-soaked jeans. She could hear Cam yell out in protest, Hey, you perv! What do you think you're doing? Kale finished slipping them off, then covered up her feet with the blanket. Relax, boy. She's not going to want to sleep in those blood-soaked clothes. And if you ever call me a pervert again, I'll kill you where you stand. Ari couldn't hold out any longer and welcomed the dark embrace of sleep. And that was the very exciting and very long chapter number 22. And we have only we're going to be going on to chapter 23, and we just have chapter 24 and 25 left. Getting so close. Now, was that not exciting? Oh my gosh, what a chapter. Oh my goodness. Well, the dog is getting restless, and the car is losing gas, and it's getting hot, so I guess we'll be moving inside. I'm so excited. I might just finish up the last few chapters as well. I don't know. But I do need to start uploading these. Does no good to film them if you don't upload them. Oh, very exciting. Gosh, I was so into that. I hope you were too. Till next time, peace.